clouds over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star. Opened the earth, rocking with blood-soaked feet. She challenged the whip, the gun, the knife. She challenged the fire, pulled from the bodies of slaves, made into laws, prisons, and courts.
Greetings and welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump will meet with Russian President Putin on Friday, August 15th in Alaska to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. Is Zelensky invited to the party? Well, The Guardian reports the U.S. ambassador to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, said yesterday that Zelensky could attend this week's summit as European leaders are pushing for Kiev to be a part of the negotiations. So how do Russia and the U.S. meet to discuss the fate of Ukraine without Ukraine? Well, let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historic context in which most of these events take place. Let's quickly look at some of today's headlines. The Washington Post reports Trump announces federal takeover of D.C. police and the D.C. police and deploys the National Guard to allegedly fight crime. He said today he's putting the district police under federal control and deploying the National Guard to fight crime. Quote, I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take back our capital. He also suggested the National Guard could be deployed to cities such as Chicago, when asked by a reporter if he might expand federal action in Washington to other cities. Quote, if we need to, we're going to do the same thing in Chicago. What a disaster, end quote. Folks, somebody better check this dude's code at the door. Can you say martial law? Germany halts weapons exports to Israel that could be used in Gaza over Netanyahu's plan to escalate. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said Friday that Berlin was halting the export of military equipment that Israel could use in Gaza, quote, until further notice, end quote. A step that came in response to the Israeli cabinet approving plans to significantly escalate Israel's genocidal war with the goal of taking over Gaza City. And finally, Al Jazeera reports Iran rejects planned transit corridor outlined in Armenia Azerbaijan pact. Iran is distancing itself from ally Russia as it rejects planned border corridor backed by Trump. Folks, this could be the next step in a huge mess. If you don't know about the Armenia Azerbaijan pact, you need to do a little reading on it. You'll be surprised. On today's episode, the issue before us is U.S. President Trump to meet with Putin on Friday in Alaska to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. As I've asked in the open, is Zelensky invited to the party? Not yet. But Lil Marco told us a few months ago that this was a proxy war. So I guess the adage is true. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. My guest is an independent journalist and host of the Misty Winston Show. Misty Winston, as always, Misty, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So there's a lot for us to cover today, and let's start with this Trump and Putin meeting. They're going to meet in Alaska on Friday. As I just said, is Zelensky invited to the party? Not yet. Trump says, he might be. Lil Marco told us a few months ago that this was a proxy war. And I think the structure of this summit is evidence of such. And again, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that that's been abundantly clear from day one. I don't think you or I or most people paying any attention to this whatsoever needed Marco Rubio to tell us that this was a proxy war. But you're right. The structure of this meeting and really the way that this whole thing has been handled, between the three parties involved, the fact that the United States has such a heavy hand and such heavy involvement in discussions and in these kind of debates and negotiations and all of that stuff, I think has made it, pretty readily abundantly clear that this has always been a proxy war. So I think Zelensky needs to be very careful because we all know what happens to, the puppets of the United States once we're through with them. And I think he's on very dangerous ground right now. He's on very shaky ground right now. But I think that you're absolutely right. This is, if there's going to be a deal that is reached, I think Zelensky is going to have very little to do with it. And I think that his wishes or what he thinks or wants, I think that that's going to play little to no role in whatever negotiation is hammered out. Obviously, there's a lot of back and forth taking place right now between what each of the countries expects to happen in order to end this war. But I will say, Wilmer, this is a really long 24 hours, right? Remember when Donald Trump told us that he was going to have this thing wrapped up in 24 hours as president-elect even? He didn't even think he needed to take office to get this thing taken care of. So this has been a very long 24 hours for Donald Trump.
It's such a long 24 hours. It feels like Groundhog Day. This is Misty, to that point, I think a big part of what we're seeing here is how desperate Donald Trump is, because no matter where you are on the political spectrum, he made a lot of promises during the campaign that he has not been able to bring to fruition. And this is one of them. And I really can't see, based upon intellectual horsepower, I can't see Putin and Trump sitting at a table. Donald Trump's going to lose interest in about 15 minutes. Putin's going to sense that he already knows going in, he's dealing with a maniac. This is a pea shooter at a gunfight.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that what's most interesting about this is the way that Putin has kind of handled the situation and watched it play out. And I think you and I have discussed this many times before.
Mm-hmm.
He's been incredibly patient throughout the course of the past decade or so. I mean, this has really been a situation that's been kind of boiling up over the past, 8, 9, 10 years or so. And he's been incredibly patient throughout that time. And I think that we're seeing that play out again right now. I think that he absolutely knows he has the upper hand here. There's really no question about it. I think that he knows that Trump is in a very interesting situation. As you mentioned, lots of promises were made, very little have been kept. And that's not surprising, but I think that what's interesting about what's happening is that at least what I've been noticing myself is that there is a certain segment of the MAGA support base that is not shy to call him out, which I think is interesting, because when we see the liberal base, they very rarely, if ever, will call out their elected officials. I mean, in fact, they will run cover for them, make excuses for them. I mean, we saw the way that they handled Barack Obama, who, this guy dropped, he was the, Sir Drones a lot, right? He was the drone king, was bombing weddings and funerals and school buses full of children and all of that stuff. And they like to pretend like his only controversy was a tan suit. So they always make excuses and give a pass to their leaders. But we're seeing now a lot of really high profile MAGA supporters, the likes of people like Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people are being very vocal and loud about the fact that Donald Trump has made these promises and has really made no effort to keep any of them. And so I think that that's an interesting situation. And I think Putin has been very patient and knows that he has the upper hand here, and knows that this is a situation that if he just sits back and waits, they're really going to be left with no choice. And I think at this point, it's kind of sunk cost fallacy. I think the United States is in so far at this point that it's difficult, that they need a way to exit without looking a fool, which I think is probably too late. They already look a fool. But I think that that's really what we're seeing here. And I think that Putin knows exactly who he's dealing with, and he knows exactly how to handle him.
Well, and to that point, and again, we have discussed this, but I think it's relevant now, and that is whether it's Putin or whether it's Xi, both of them, first of all, are highly trained diplomats.
Yeah.
And they are highly, and that's why I make the point about Trump coming to the table, sitting across from Putin. They're highly trained diplomats that come from cultures that have thousands of years of history. And so they bring a whole different level of gravitas to the conversation. Donald Trump is just outmanned. He's outgunned. He's outthought. You're sending a boy in to do a man's job.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to sound sexist.
No.
You're sending a child in to do an adult's job. How about that?
Yes. And I actually just saw a clip from Chris Hedges' show where he was interviewing Roger Waters, and Roger Waters was talking about Donald Trump and said that he's an idiot. We all know it. And he's always been monumentally stupid. He's a terrible businessman. His supporters like to pretend like he's this great businessman, the art of the deal. He's a terrible businessman, always has been. He doesn't pay his bills. He doesn't pay his contractors. He, just anytime it gets rough, he declares bankruptcy and runs away. He's a con man.
Wait a minute, Misty. Here's the question on the business side. How do you bankrupt a casino?
It's a great question.
Is a license to print money.
Yeah.
And there is an adage, the house always wins.
Yeah.
And he lost.
Yeah, he did.
He bankrupted a casino. Okay, so let's move. Go ahead, finish it.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point that Roger Waters was making in that interview, that Trump is in way over his head. And we all know that he's not actually making any decisions and that he's really just the figurehead. He's kind of the front man for real power. But I think that's, and what I am grateful for is I think that is, people have really started to question that. And I don't think it started with Trump. I think that really it started with Biden, because if anything made it really evident that presidents don't make decisions, it was President Soup for Brains, right? Like that guy was I'm not even sure he was choosing what tie to wear every day. And so I think that's really started to make people question. And I think Trump is just really adding on to that, because he is so monumentally stupid and ill-prepared. And he's just such a buffoon. He never really seems to know what's going on. He's constantly, just kind of fumbling around. He's not really sure what to say. And very often he says the thing he's not supposed to say out loud, which frankly is my favorite thing about him.
Mhm.
He says the quiet part out loud. He has no gift for subtlety. He doesn't know when to shut up. And so I think that has really caused a lot of people to question it. But I think that you're absolutely correct. And I do think that Putin and the likes of Xi, they know exactly who Trump is. They know exactly how to handle him. And really, it's not Trump that they're handling. That's just the public facing, position. But I think that, this is, he's in way over his head and always has been.
So I also, just from a historic perspective, I think the venue is incredibly interesting.
Yes.
Because in 1867, Russian Emperor Alexander II sold Alaska to the United States for 7.2 million, less than 2 cents an acre. Also, I believe that there is still an outstanding ICC warrant for the arrest of Putin. So one could wonder, is it possible that when he walks in the room, old Trumpster tries to put the cuffs on the man? I mean,
anything's possible. I don't think they're that stupid though, because that would be
no.
Yeah, that would be a monumental escalation. You know what I'm saying? That would be a very large escalation that I don't think that they're really looking for. I think that the United States at this point is looking for a way to exit without looking completely dumb. And we already look very foolish. I think that most people, you and I knew it from day one. We've been talking about the Ukraine situation from day one, that it was an unwinnable war, a proxy war that was being fought on behalf of the United States. And essentially, we have now sacrificed an entire generation of Ukrainian men on the altar of Western imperialism. And I think most people who have, the sense to look at this thing objectively know that. But I think that we've now reached a point where, and I think that that's why we're starting to see a lot of distractionary stuff pop up. I think that they're trying to find a way to kind of silently back out and maybe take some of the pressure and some of the attention off of the situation. And I think that we're starting to see that. But I do think that this is something that at this point, it's going to be a really difficult time for them to be able to back out without some fallout. And I think Trump really had an amazing opportunity to get out of this thing. When he took office, he really did have an opportunity to do what he promised and to do and to just get out of it. Even if Russia and Ukraine continues, get out of it, get the United States out of it. The United States public doesn't want any part of this. We're tired of sending money and weapons to faraway countries to blow up poor people when we're not even able to take care of our own here. And I think that he had a wonderful opportunity to just back out. And this is a Biden thing. Look, he screwed all this up. Look at what Biden did. And his base would have eaten that up. And frankly, a lot of non-Trump supporters would have been happy about that. I don't know if it would have turned them into Trump supporters, but I think they certainly would have been thrilled with the prospect of getting out of another unwinnable war. So he made a huge blunder there. But honestly, again, he's not the one making the decisions. This is a proxy war that people in actual power wanted and that they got. And I think Trump is just doing his best to kind of navigate that situation.
So how do you interpret the stories that European leaders are fearful that Trump's going to cut a deal with Putin, undermining Ukraine and putting the continent's security at risk? Because here's something that I honestly don't understand, and I'm turning to greater minds than mine, like yours, for insight. They're afraid that Trump is putting the continent at risk, as though the continuation of this conflict doesn't put the continent at risk. When Putin says, I've submitted a request to my council to lower our nuclear threshold policy, now stating that any third party, that if Ukraine acts on behalf of a third party, we will consider, if that third party is nuclear armed, to be a nuclear attack. That doesn't put the continent at greater risk.
Right. It's nonsensical. But I think that this is the lie that I think a lot of European countries needed to tell their people in order to manufacture consent for their involvement in this situation, because they needed, listen, fear is a very powerful manipulator. It is I think it's the most powerful manipulator. I think that it is a very easy way to get people to do what you want, is to make them afraid. And that's why you'll often see politicians lead a statement or a speech with a fear-based sentence, because once you're afraid, your ability to think clearly after that, after everything else they say after that, is going to hit a little bit differently, because you are now in fear mode. And so I think that that's this is the lie that they have had to tell their people, that Putin wants to take over Europe. He's going to take over the world, and Ukraine is just the first step, despite the fact that there's zero evidence whatsoever to back that claim up. And Putin himself has said time and time again, and listen, I'm not saying you should believe Putin. He is too a politician. He's also a liar. Like, we all know that they're all, scumbags. Like, you can't reach that level of power without being kind of a psychopath. You have to be, in order to do the things necessary to get to that level of power. So I'm not suggesting you should trust Putin, but there's really been no evidence whatsoever to back those claims. But I think that that's really what it was, is that the European countries needed to sell that lie in order to justify their involvement in the situation. And now, again, it's that sunk cost fallacy. They're in it so deep that they need to continue to perpetuate that lie in order to, refrain from looking so stupid and like giant liars.
And and just to put a final dot on your point, I don't know Vladimir Putin from Buddha House Cat.
No,
but I've never heard him say anything.
No.
About expanding Russian territory.
No.
History has shown since 2014 that he's done everything to de-escalate, not escalate. And finally, whether it's Sergei Lavrov, whether it's Vladimir Putin, whether it's Medvedev, they've all been very consistent in articulating their position. They haven't deviated very, very much, if at all. So when I look at those elements, they tell me you need to listen to what he's saying. And also, they don't bluff.
Yeah.
They don't bluff, and they don't scare. So,
well, and on the flip side of that, just really quickly, in contrast to what you just said about Putin and Russia, that they've made no attempts to expand territory. NATO has done the exact opposite of that. I mean, we're not going to expand 1 inch west. And we've done exactly that. So again, I think very oftentimes every accusation leveled by the West is often a confession. And we see that with Israel and Gaza. We see that with much of what the United States does. We very often like to accuse others of that which we are guilty of. And we see that time and time again. And I think that this is just another example of that.
Javier Burgos, I think I did that right. It is far from sunk cost. Look into how leveraged the euro investment in Ukraine. The end of the war now would collapse the euro. That's an interesting point. Javier, I'm not saying you're wrong. I've never heard anybody say that the end of the war would collapse the euro. I would think the end of the war would at least stabilize the euro, because A, the region would become calm, and B, the members of the European Union would not be throwing good money after bad. So if you want to elaborate, Javier, on how this would collapse the euro, I'd love to hear it, because that's a point I haven't heard any economists make. So with that, let us move on. Misty, I think I can say with fairly great certainty that the Zionist settler colonial state called Israel has lost the battle of the narrative.
Yes.
Now, if humanity can just win the war, UK police arrest 522 people over support for Palestine action at London protests. More than 100 of those arrested were We're over 70 years old. Misty, your thoughts on what we're seeing in terms of this war in the court of public opinion?
Yeah, they've lost. And I think that that is maybe the best thing that has come. I mean, if you're trying to find a tiny like silver lining or bright spot in this whole situation, which is an incredibly dark situation, it's difficult to find any positives, but I think that this is definitely one if you're looking for it, because, and I think a lot of this, and we may have talked about this at some point on this show as well, but I think that a lot of this has had to do with the invention of social media and the use of social media. And listen, I'm not saying social media isn't a giant cesspool. It is absolutely a cesspool of negativity and awfulness. But I think that what has been so interesting about this go round in the Israel-Palestine situation, I don't even know what you can call it, devastation. What we have seen is that prior to this, I think Israel had a complete lock on the narrative. They controlled everything. And people will come at me and call me anti-Semitic saying that I'm saying Jews controlled the media. No, I'm saying Zionists controlled the media. And that's absolutely true. I think that they have had absolute control over mainstream press, what is covered in print, what's covered on the news, all of it. There's really been a lockdown, and they're very good at that game. They're very good at the propaganda spin game, or at least they used to be. But I think now what we've seen is that this time something would happen and Israel would spin a lie, and within hours it was debunked by people on the ground who were able to just very plainly look at the situation and say, no, that's not true. Here's what happened. And I think that what that has done, in particular with the younger generations, and I feel so old saying that, but I think
and I'm a lot older than you.
With the kids, the young kids now these days, they are very online. They are very much on social media. That is kind of their play space. And I think that they're also very engaged. I think in situations like this, I think that the younger generation seems to be much more curious than maybe my generation or generations before me in the political sphere. At least that's kind of the vibe that I get from them. And so I think a lot of them were really tuned into this. And what has happened is because they're so tuned in, they've been exposed to so much that that Israel has done and lied about, that they started to again ask questions, which I think that is the key. Once you're put in a position where you start to question something and you ask that first initial question, it becomes an avalanche, and you start asking questions. Well, if they're going to lie about 40 beheaded babies, what else did they lie about? And I think that that's really created this kind of cascading effect of people starting to not just look at now, October 7th and onward, but the past, and really take an examination of how we got to this point. And I think that a lot of previous Israeli propaganda has been melted away because people started asking those questions. And I think I think you're absolutely right. I think they are losing the narrative war, but what I worry about is I don't know if that's going to be enough to save Palestine. It's not looking good. I'm just going to be honest. I know that sounds very cynical and negative. I'm just trying to give an honest interpretation of what I'm seeing. And I'm no expert. I'm just some chick in Ohio, right? But that's just what I'm getting, is that it's very bad. We've all seen it. We've all seen the aerial images of Gaza City, and I mean, even of the West Bank. And we've heard of the tens of thousands of people who have been slaughtered, the innocent children who have been pulled from underneath rubble, all of that stuff. And it's a horrific thing that we're witnessing. We're having it live streamed to us daily, which is, I mean, kind of nuts to even consider that that's happening, and that it's been able to continue for so long. But I do think that, I mean, there was just a UN Security Council meeting, an emergency meeting about the situation, and it was the United States and Israel, and that was it. Everybody else is against Israel. And I think that we've really seen that tide shift, and there's really no going back, I think, at this point.
And not only, great point about, we don't know if all of this now, if this turn in mindset is enough and is soon enough to save Gaza. And then beyond that, when you look at what they've done in Britain, and when you look at what's being done here, we also have to be concerned about saving democracy.
Yeah. Yes. And the idea that we are witnessing, and I want people to be very clear, what had just happened in the UK is absolutely coming here. I mean, what do you think all of these
It
new
is here.
anti-Semitic, it is here, not to that level. We haven't seen hundreds of people en masse be arrested for peacefully protesting, literally just holding a sign that says, I support Palestine Action, which, by the way, Palestine Action has done nothing. That no violence whatsoever has been committed by Palestine Action. And yet they're labeled a terrorist organization. The state of Israel is not somehow, despite the fact that they are slaughtering innocent people en masse. So I think that's fascinating. But when we're seeing it right now, there's all kinds of conversations about all these new anti-Semitism laws and all of this stuff. And this is not new. They've been really kind of slow walking us into this for some time. I mean, years ago, I think it was maybe 2015, 2016, we saw DHS put out that the little pamphlet about domestic violent extremists. So this has really been something that they've been pushing towards for a very long time. They want to silence any and all dissent. This is what the Julian Assange persecution was about. This is what, I mean, there's been so many things that this has been kind of slow walked on us. And the fact that we haven't fought back against any of it is what has made, or some of us have not. But this is what has made it so much easier and has gotten us to this point now, where we're in real danger. I don't think people realize, and I realize I'm biased here because I'm a free speech person. I'm a free speech activist. And so that's kind of my thing. And it's kind of been my obsession. And so it's what I spend a lot of time on. It's what my activism has been about. And so being that it's my focus, I am probably a little bit biased about the importance of it, but I don't think I'm wrong. I think that this is easily the most crucial issue that is facing us at this time, is the attempt to silence all of us and to, they want full control over the narrative. And frankly, it doesn't matter what you care about. You can't fight for it if you can't speak. And that's what we are in real danger of losing. And we don't even have free speech right now. But the little tiny semblance, the little tiny strings that we've been holding on to, those are very quickly being ripped away from us. And I don't think people are paying enough attention to it. And I realize that there's a lot of reasons for that. I think free speech and press freedom are kind of abstract concepts. It's not an in-your-face thing every day. It's not, hey, I can't feed my kids, or I can't afford to go to the doctor, or I can't pay my rent, or any of those like very tangible, very pressing issues on a day-to-day basis. But I think that that's why they've been so effective at stripping it away from us. And now we're seeing in the UK, hundreds of protesters. I watched the videos. I had friends who were on the ground, hundreds of protesters being arrested simply for holding a sign, peacefully protesting, saying, I support Palestine Action. And meanwhile, the UK government has no problem sending money and bombs to a genocidal state to slaughter children en masse. It's wild that this is what's happening.
And Mr. Sandman says, Ohio has the smartest women in America.
You must be from Ohio.
Or married to a woman from Ohio.
Yeah.
So following along this same theme, there's an interesting piece in Jacobin. Belgium's arrest of IDF soldiers could be a watershed moment. This is by Mohammed Magdi. Belgium's detention of Israeli soldiers over alleged war crimes in Gaza has set a historic precedent for holding Israel to account for its war crimes, and it's a sign that the tide is turning against Israel. For the first time, Israeli soldiers were detained and questioned in Europe over alleged war crimes. There were, I think, Israeli soldiers attending a music festival, and they were either wearing IDF uniforms or they were holding IDF flags. There was some indication that they were IDF, and they were detained and questioned in Belgium. Misty, your thoughts?
I love it. And I think that this is kind of probably a watershed moment. It really is the first time we've seen something like that happen. And I think that further, we've seen not just in Belgium, but in many places, including here in the United States, Israeli supporters, IDF soldiers, former IDF soldiers are really starting to be shunned the way that they should be from society. We've seen them be confronted on the street. We've seen them be kicked out of cafes in European countries where they're like, nope, out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. And I think that, again, as we talked about earlier, the tide has shifted so dramatically. And I think that is again, as cynical as I am, and I realize I am very cynical, but I think as cynical as I am, there is a little bit of hope that lies there, because, you know, a few years ago, you would have never heard this. We would have never heard this. And I think that really is just so indicative of how powerful the Israeli propaganda game was, how powerful their control over the narrative was. And they really have lost that. And I think that's because of that, we're going to start to see more of this. And I think that we need more of this. I think that, Israeli supporters, Zionists in general, in my opinion, should be shunned from polite society. You shouldn't be welcome anywhere. This is just not, it's just not conducive to a civilized society to withhold, to have Zionist ideology. It's just not. You don't get to, believe in a genocidal political ideology, and we're just supposed to like welcome you and act like that's just another difference of opinion. This is not like a debate over unions or healthcare. No, this is literal genocide. And I think that and I'm somebody who, and you know this, I love engaging with people I disagree with. I have friends across the political spectrum. We do not agree on everything. We debate those things and all of that stuff. So I am not somebody who shuns people for holding a different opinion than my own. But again, this is not like a difference of opinion on education. This is literal genocide.
To your point, this is not the political spectrum.
No,
this is not a genocide, collective punishment, war crimes.
Yes, it's murder. Mass murder.
That's not the political spectrum.
Mm-mm.
It's talking about the elimination of humanity.
Yes.
And so when someone, as it relates to Kamala Harris in the 2024 election, how do you rationalize genocide? In fact, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I've mentioned it on the show a number of times. It was a senator, senator from Georgia, had a town hall meeting, and this Palestinian woman stands up and says, Raphael Warnock, she says, can you explain to me how you can vote to send money to Israel? And she says, make this make sense.
You can't.
You can't. And so that has become one of my mantras. It make this make sense.
There's no justification, Wilmer. And I think that is a beautiful thing, because there was just a video, I think posted either yesterday or today, of a town hall meeting in Wisconsin. And the Congress member, his name is escaping me. I'm really bad at names. But the entire, a whole group full of regular Midwestern people stood up and were challenging him very strongly. And the only thing that he had, and this is it, this is all that they have left, is Israel has a right to defend itself. Well, Israel's not defending itself. It never has been. Israel is the occupier. Israel is the aggressor. Israel is the war criminal. There is no Israel has a right to defend itself. No, it doesn't. It is not defending itself, first of all. But second of all, it's completely out of line with what's happening. Hamas doesn't have an army. They don't have a military. They don't have a navy. They don't have bombs. They don't have any of the things that Israel has. And so it's completely disproportionate. Even if you thought that Israel had a right to defend itself, which it does not, it's a completely disproportionate reaction to what has happened. And the mass slaughter of innocent women and children is not justifiable ever. You don't get to blow up an entire apartment building because you claim one member of Hamas might be inside and think that that's okay. You don't get to slaughter over 200 journalists and think that that's okay and it's justifiable and we're all just going to be okay with it and go along with it. That's just not excusable. It's not justifiable, and it is without explanation. And so that's all that they have. That's the only leg that they have left to stand on, and it's a paper tiger. It makes no sense. And I think more and more people, again, in Wisconsin, just regular people at a town hall, and they've had enough. And I think that is a fantastic thing that we're seeing. Again, I'm not sure it'll be enough to save the people of Palestine or Palestine, the country. But I think that it's a beautiful thing to witness people coming to those realizations and being emboldened to really challenge their elected officials in that way.
And to boil it down to boil your point down to its most simple element, you can explain it like this. I cannot walk into your house uninvited with a pistol, and when you raise yours and I shoot you in your home, I cannot claim self-defense.
No. That's a great analogy. No.
I cannot claim self-defense. And also, there's a reason why the territory we are talking about is still, as much as the Zionist government hates for this term to be used, is still known as the occupied territory.
Yeah. There's
a reason for that. So, again, in its simplest terms, I think those two things.
Well, if we're talking about a right under international law, the Palestinian people have a right to resist their occupier,
and that is any means at their disposal to do so.
Yeah. So, do you condemn Hamas? No, I do not condemn Hamas. Absolutely not. And it's so fascinating to me that people are incapable of a little bit of empathy because for me, it's so simple. It's so simple, Wilmer. For me,
it is very simple.
If you come into my neighborhood and start slaughtering my neighbors and my children, and you take my house and you burn down my fields, I'm going to fight back. I'm absolutely going to fight back. And it's weird to me that Americans, of all people, Americans, we pride ourselves on being American, right? Like we're Americans. And you don't recognize that the willingness and the desire to fight back for what is yours. It's so weird to me that people aren't.
But no, it's not. Not when you put it in the American context. It isn't weird because that's how America became America.
Right. That's what I understand why Americans don't get it. You cannot.
Because we are watching the Zionist settler colony of Israel replay what we did to the Native Americans, what we did to Africans in bringing them to this country. So this is how America became America.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of Americans that say, well, might makes right. And this is what we did. So it must be right since manifest destiny and all of that other, white man's burden and all those other often used tropes to rationalize and justify America's crimes against humanity. There are a lot of folks that say it's a variation of the same theme.
Yeah, it's a great point. And you're absolutely right. And I think that it's very depressing to think that it's kind of in our DNA, right? Like to make excuses for that and to justify it. And I think a little bit of it might be a little bit of guilt. Like we don't want to admit that what we've done is wrong. And so we have to justify it elsewhere so that we can feel okay about where we've been. But that's what I think is so frustrating is that in the year of our Lord, 2025, we're still out here blowing people up for profit and over. I mean, my Twitter handle is @sarcasmstardust. It is that because of Carl Sagan. And I was a huge fan of Carl Sagan growing up.
Billions of
yes, I love Carl Sagan growing up. And Pale Blue Dot, I think everybody should have to listen to Pale Blue Dot at least once in their lifetime. And in that, he talks about the idea of I'm very much paraphrasing here, but the ridiculousness of killing each other over a tiny plot of land on this little rock that's floating through space. Like here we are, we get this, and I'm not religious in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but I do find life to be a beautiful adventure. And here we are put on this earth for, if we're lucky, 70, 80, maybe 90 years with advances in medicine. And we're choosing to spend that time blowing each other up over land. It's so stupid to me. And I'm sorry I got a little philosophical there, but it's so frustrating to me that we as a species are choosing to go about our business in that manner, and that we're allowing the worst among us to rise to positions of power and to perpetuate these types of crimes when really we could just be chill. We could just be hanging out and cooperating and helping each other and, offering assistance when we need it. And it could just be chill. And instead we choose violence and aggression and chaos and destruction and murder. And it's just so sad to me.
Well said. To the point about journalists, Israeli strike on a tent in Gaza kills 5 Al Jazeera journalists. Among those was Anas al-Sharif, a well-known reporter who was the target of an Israeli smear campaign. And this occurred outside the gates of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. 5 journalists were killed, and Israel's response is, oh, there was a member of Hamas that we were going after, which is the often used trope by Israel. There was Hamas, and we had to go after Hamas.
Well, they tried to lie and say that Anas is a member of Hamas.
Correct.
And this is not a new tactic for them. They very often will do this. They'll try to paint somebody as a terrorist, a member of Hamas sympathizer, whatever, in order to justify the murder of that person. They've done it with doctors. They've done it with academics. They've done it with other journalists. And they did it here. And this has been a smear campaign that they've been leveling for a couple of months at least. And the Committee to Protect Journalists even came out in July and warned people that Israel is right now engaged in a propaganda campaign against this journalist in order to manufacture consent for his murder. And we need to protect him. And look what happened. He has been murdered. And this is exactly what they do all of the time. It's disgusting. It's despicable. They've killed over 230 some odd journalists at this point, which is well above and beyond any other war in history. In fact, most other wars combined, I think. And as somebody who is, again, a press freedom girly, this is so disgusting on every level. And the fact that Western press says nothing. I mean, Western media doesn't talk about this. I can't remember. And to be fair, I don't watch a lot of mainstream media. But I haven't heard, Chris Hayes or Rachel Maddow or anybody wringing their hands over the murder of their colleagues, which, to be fair, they're not colleagues because the journalists in Gaza are actual journalists. But yeah, it's very frustrating to me. And this is really, this is just another method of controlling the narrative. They don't want the truth to get out, and so they murder the people who are telling it.
And to your point about the journalists that are killed, there's a reason why they wear these blue flak jackets that say press on them. Yeah. That's not supposed to be a target.
No.
That's supposed to...
That's off limits.
That and the big red cross on the Jeep. You're not supposed to shoot doctors and you're not supposed to shoot journalists.
Yeah.
But somehow the settler colonial government has decided, no, that big red cross is a target. It is not supposed to, is not an element of protection. And that press flak jacket is a target. It's not supposed to mean off limits.
Yeah. And it's a literal war crime. A war crime to kill medical personnel and journalists. Both are war crimes, and Israel has been doing it out loud in the open, and in fact bragging about it. Again, they admitted to and bragged about killing Anas. He's a terrorist. And what is so fascinating to me is the number of people who are willing to buy that uncritically. Oh, well, Israel said that he's a terrorist, and in fact Reuters, which is not surprising to me because everybody needs to remember that in Iraq, the United States murdered 2 Reuters journalists on camera, and WikiLeaks released the video of that murder. It's called Collateral Murder. Go check it out. And they did nothing. Reuters did nothing to stand up for their 2 people. They did nothing to hold the United States accountable for the murder of their 2 journalists. So it's not surprising to me that Reuters is taking this tactic, but they're printing uncritically Israel. And frankly, for me, and this is just my opinion, any sentence that starts with the IDF claims should be immediately discounted as nonsense. These are known liars. There's nothing about IDF claims that rings true to me ever. My instant instinct is they're lying. That's it. They're lying, and we'll go from there. And if it happens to be true, and you can show me really hardcore proof that it happens to be true, then maybe I'll consider amending my position. But the IDF is known. How many times do they get to be caught in a lie before before your sense of skepticism kicks in? They lied about 40 beheaded babies. They lied about errant Hamas missiles. They've lied over. And I mean, they're still out there pretending that they're finding copies of Mein Kampf in Palestinian homes. And they just so happen in a genocide, happen to be pristine, brand new copies, no dust, no dirt, no tears, no rips, just pristine copies of this book that they're able to find, which is just insane to me. But again, these are known liars. And so if you are a journalist or a media outlet and you are uncritically publishing something like the IDF claims, you should be ashamed of yourself. And so it's not surprising to me that Reuters is out here carrying the water for a genocidal regime, but they all need to be held accountable. And I think that that's not something that we discuss enough. It's not just Israel. Israel has many collaborators, the United States government, European governments, there are a lot of people, but also the press. And I think that the mainstream press in this country and in the West in general get off way too easy, way too often. They are the distributor of information that leads us into these situations all the time, every time. The Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, we could go through the Gulf of Tonkin, the Syrian gas attacks. We can go through all of the situations in which they have lied to the American people and the West in general in order to manufacture consent and justify our entry into these situations. And I don't think that they get held accountable nearly enough. They are every bit as accountable as the government, as Israel, because they are the ones who are lying. They are the ones who are distributing the information and misinforming the American public in such a disgusting and just, I mean, it's heinous what they do, and they have no shame whatsoever, and they're doing it again. And now they're lying about Anas, pretending as if he was a Hamas terrorist, and when in fact, he is supposed to be a member of them. He's supposed to be one of their colleagues. They should be standing up, screaming from the rooftops, as they should have been doing with Julian Assange when he was being persecuted, and they remained silent for over a decade. This is the same type of a situation where they are standing by silently as journalism, literally journalism as an institution, as a concept, as a philosophy is being destroyed right in front of them, but they don't care because they're propagandists and they're not journalists.
Final question for you. We're seeing a level of assassination unlike any that we've seen up to this point.
Yeah.
We see a steady amount of escalations. Germany, for example, trying to rearm Ukraine. What we saw that led us into World War II. We saw Czechoslovakia. We saw Poland. We know that history. Are we watching now a similar march toward wider conflict? And if so, what lessons do you think what lessons can we apply to the current circumstance that we should have learned post World War II?
Oh boy, that's a big question. For me, I think that what is so frustrating is how effective they are at dividing us. And that is how they win each and every time. It is insanely effective. And we're seeing it play out right now. And they're very smart about the way that they do it. They choose very emotionally driven issues to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, whether it be LGBTQ rights or abortion rights or whatever. And I'm not saying that those issues do not matter. Yeah. Yes. And I'm not saying those issues do not matter. Of course they do. Those are very nuanced and complicated issues that need very earnest discussion, very legitimate discussion, not the back and forth finger pointing, name calling nonsense that we see typically. Those are very real issues that are deserving of intelligent, nuanced, and empathetic conversations where we can try to find common ground or at least reach an understanding, right? I think we can all agree to that. But what they do is they use, and we're seeing it what's very disturbing right now is we're seeing it with immigration and crime. And that is being very much used against us. We are being led right into martial law, as you mentioned at the top of the show. We are being led, right? And it's no different than the Patriot Act, right? They want to clamp down on our rights even further. And the way that they do it, as I mentioned earlier, they have to scare you. And so they're scaring us with all this immigration and all this crime. All these rapists are coming into the country. And so they elevate those stories in the media. And so they have you afraid, even if, and I'm not saying those stories aren't happening. Of course they are, but you'll notice that they are very prevalent in media, that they are the stories that are at the top of the hour, every hour. They want to just beat it into your head that you are in danger, you're in danger. And that way you're too busy being mad and angry at immigrants to be mad and angry at them. And it's so effective. They do it with LGBTQ. They do it with gay rights. They've done it with Epstein. They're doing it with all of the periphery issues. And the reason why they do that is because we are much easier to control when we are divided. And I'm not saying that we have to all be buddy pals. We have to agree on everything, but we have a common enemy. And I can guarantee you that your enemy is not your neighbor. We have collective enemies, and they wear very expensive suits and sit in boardrooms. But we're too busy fighting each other to ever come together in any substantive way to actually fight what the problem is. And we can have those conversations about those issues. Absolutely. And we should. But we can't have those until we deal with the system that is designed to kill us all. And so I think that that's, to me, if I could impress upon anybody any one thing, it's to stop letting them divide you. Stop it, because that is how they win. And that's how they're winning right now. And it's an incredibly effective tool. I'm not sure how we overcome it. I wish I were smart enough to have those answers. But that, to me, I think is how they've been so effectively maintaining power and control, is that they just keep you fighting amongst yourselves. You and your neighbors have no power. You have no authority. Most of you have no money. We have no money. We have no, and so your neighbor is not your enemy. You have to deal with the actual problem, which is the system. And then we can have those conversations.
A couple of things before we go. One, Zhao Yun says, the German government is now saying they will no longer supply Israel with weapons.
Yeah.
That's not correct.
Yeah. That's
the language is very important.
Yeah.
What Germany has said is they are halting the supply until further notice.
Yeah.
It's very important here to understand they always leave themselves an out.
Mm-hmm.
France said, we will recognize the Palestinian state. But then they said, unless Israel takes the following action.
Yeah.
So they always leave themselves an out. So no, Germany did not say that they will no longer supply weapons. That's not what they said. What they said was they are halting the transfer of weapons until further notice.
Yeah.
And Ickwix, I think that's how this should be pronounced. Thank you for that $20 super sticker. And I see who we're dealing with. My brother. There we go. Brother Hicks, thank you. The unparalleled evil that is taking place domestically and internationally is absolutely staggering. And there seems to be so much complacency and indifference about it.
Very frustrating. It's very frustrating. And I think, honestly, a lot of that is exhaustion. I think that they have us right where they want us. I think most people are exhausted. They have to work 2 or 3 jobs. They've got kids. They got to go to soccer practice. They got to mow the grass. They got to go to the grocery store. They got to get their oil changed. And most people are just tired. And that's exactly where they want you. And listen, George Carlin said this ages ago. They want you smart enough to run the machines, and that's it. And he was exactly right. And so and that's what I think is so sad to me, because I hate my government, but I love this country. I love the people of this country. And I've spoken to people from other countries where they have said, For example, I'm kind of obsessed with tornadoes. I love weather in general, but tornadoes is a particular interest of mine. And people have said, oh my God, I can't believe how you guys come together after a natural disaster like that. It's like in my country, we don't do that. Like we don't come together. And I love the people of this country. And what makes me so sad is that we have allowed ourselves to be beaten down so hard that we've just accepted that, like, oh, I guess this is the best we can do. This is what we deserve. It's not. We deserve so much more. And that's what I think is so frustrating to me. It gets me. That's why I get so fired up about this, because they've got us divided and they've got us so beaten down. And it's just very frustrating to watch my fellow Americans. If I can sound like a politician for a moment, it makes me very sad to see my fellow Americans be so willing to accept the disgusting behavior of this government and of our leaders. We don't have to. We really don't have to. There's so many more of us than there are of them. And if we chose to come together and stop letting them divide us, we could easily get better. We deserve better, and we could have better if we just come together. And
to your point, the fact that they're using fear to manufacture consent, folks, you've got to go beyond MSNBC. You got to go beyond. That's why Misty has her show. That's why I have this show. And that's why we're on each other's shows.
Yeah.
Is because we are part of the resistance to the manufacturing of consent and using fear mongering as the vehicle through which to do that.
Yep.
I have a point here: compassion fatigue, specifically the exhaustion that comes from caring about or being exposed to others' suffering on top of your own responsibilities. Compassion fatigue. With that, Misty Winston, as always,
thank you.
You are always so kind when I call. I greatly appreciate it. And as always, look forward to having you back.
Anytime. Thank you.
And folks, you have been listening to thank you all so much for joining me today. You've been listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Laith Marouf will join us tomorrow from Lebanon. That will be the new show tomorrow. Follow, subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. Please contribute. We've got to get to that 10,000 subscriber threshold. We've got to hit that, and we've got to hit that quickly. Remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. Why? Because this is a rhetoric-free podcast. See y'all tomorrow. Laith Marouf will join us. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.